morning. Good evening. Good afternoon, and remember, Context is Everything Media Network founder and CEO John Michael is reading a textbook, cover to cover. Please join me as we read Chapter 20, Section 3 today about the Industrial Revolution in Europe, and maybe we'll get to the United States too. Yesterday we talked about choo-choo trains and James Watt over here, please. Today, please like and subscribe because it doesn't really cost you anything. Please. Hardships of Early Industrial Life. I'm reading this textbook. It was written in 2001, copyright date. Does that mean anything? Whatever. Hardships of Early Industrial Life. Setting the scene. The Industrial Revolution brought great riches to most of the entrepreneurs who helped set it in motion. For the millions of workers who crowded into the new factories, however, the Industrial Age brought poverty and harsh living conditions. One observer commented on the disease-ridden neighborhoods and polluted air. The population is crowded into one dense mass of cottages separated by unpaved and almost pestilent streets. This is an atmosphere loaded with the exhalation of a large manufacturing city. JPK quoted in Mill Life at Style. In time, reforms would curb many of the worst abuses of the early industrial age in Europe and America. And the people at all levels of society would benefit from industrialization. Until then, working people could look forward only to lives marked by dangerous working conditions, unsafe, unsanitary, and overcrowded housing, and unrelenting poverty. The New Industrial Age. Heading. The Industrial Revolution brought rapid urbanization, or the movement of people to cities. Changes in farming, soaring population growth, and ever-increasing demand for workers led to mass of population to migrate from farms to cities. Almost overnight, small towns around coal and iron mines mushroomed into cities. Other cities grew up around factories, and entrepreneurs built in once quiet market towns. The British market town of Manchester numbered 17,000 people in the 1750s. Within a few years, it exploded into a center of textile industry. Its population soared to 40,000 by 1780 and 70,000 by 1801. Visitors described the cloud of coal vapor that polluted the air, the pounding noise of steam engines, and the filthy stench of its river. In Manchester, as elsewhere, the gulf divided urban population. A gulf. The wealthy and middle class lived in pleasant neighborhoods. Vast numbers of poor, however, struggled to survive in foul-smelling slums. They packed into tiny rooms of tenements, multi-story buildings divided into crowded apartments. These buildings had no running water, only community pumps. There was no sewage or sanitary system, and waste from the garbage rotted in the streets. Chlorella, C-H-O-L-E-R-A. Cholera. Yikes. Cholera and other diseases spread rapidly. In time, reforms pushed for laws to improve conditions in city slums. The factory system. New heading. The heart of the city, of the new industrial city, was the factory. There The technology of the machine age imposed a harsh new way of life on workers. Yikes. Rigid discipline. The factory system differed greatly from farm work. In rural villages, people worked hard, but their work varied according to the season. In factories, workers faced a rigid schedule set by the factory whistle. "While the engine runs," said an observer, "people must work. Men, women, and children are yoked together with iron and steam." Hours working were long. Shifts lasted from 12 to 16 hours. Exhausted workers suffered accidents from machines that had no safety devices. They might lose a finger, a limb, or even their lives. Workers were exposed to other dangers as well. Coal dust destroyed the lungs of miners, and textile workers constantly breathed air filled with lint. If workers were sick or injured, they lost their jobs. Women workers. Employers often preferred to hire women workers rather than men. They thought women could adapt more easily to machines and were easier to manage than men. More important, they were able to pay women less than men, even for the same work. Factory workers created special problems for women. Factory work created special problems for women. Their new jobs took them out of the homes for 12 hours or more a day. They then returned to crowded slum tenements and to feed and clothe their family, clean and cope with sickness and other problems. Family life had been hard for poor rural cottagers. In industrial towns, it was even grimmer. Child labor. Factories and mines also hired many boys and girls. Often nimble-fingered and quick-moving, children changed spools in textile mills. How strange. Here's the picture of children changing spools. It's a painting, but the boss is looking at the child, saying, "Get back to work." How strange. How bizarre. Okay, and we're back. And wages for children, wages the children earned were needed to keep their families from starving. So that's why they worked. Employers often hired orphans, making deals with local officials who were glad to have children taken off their hands. Overseers beat children accused of idling, not working hard. A few enlightened factory owners did provide basic education and a decent life for child workers. More often, though, children, like their parents, were slaves to the machines. In the 1830s and 1840s, British lawmakers looked into abuses in factories and mines. Government commissions heard about children as young as 5 years old working in factories. Some died, others were stunted in growth or had twisted limbs. Most were uneducated. Slowly, Parliament passed laws to regulate child labor in mines and factories. The working class. New heading. In rural villages, farm families had strong ties to community in which they had lived for generations. When they moved to the new industrial cities, many felt lost and bewildered. In time, though, factory and mine workers developed their own sense of community. Protests. As the Industrial Revolution began, weavers and other skilled artisans resisted the new labor-saving machines that were costing them their jobs. Some smashed some smashed machines. Where am I? Some smashed machines and burned factories. In England, such rioters were called Luddites, Luddites, after the mythical figure Ned Ludd, who supposedly destroyed machines in the 1780s. Mythical figure Ned Ludd. Ned Ludd. How strange. I've never heard of that guy ever. But maybe there can be some sort of parallel to today where people protest against the advanced intelligence, artificial intelligence, and the Luddites can return again. So I'm sticky noting it because that sounds interesting. It sounds like it might become culturally relevant again. Protests met harsh repercussions. When workers held rallies in Manchester in 1819, soldiers charged the crowd, killing dozens and injuring hundreds more. Workers were forbidden to organize in groups to bargain for better pay and working conditions. Strikes were outlawed. Spread of Methodism. Many working class people found comfort in new religious movements. In the mid-1700s, John Wesley had founded Methodist Church. Is that Wesleyan University? Is that John Wesley? Wesley stressed the need for personal sense of faith. He urged Christians to improve their lot by adopting sober moral ways. Methodist meetings featured hymns and sermons promising forgiveness for sin and a better life to come. Methodist preachers took this message of salvation into the slums. There they tried to rekindle hope among the working poor. They set up Sunday schools where followers not only studied the Bible, but also learned to write and read. Methodists helped channel workers' anger away from revolution and toward social reform. New heading. The new middle class. Those who benefited from... What did they benefit from? Those who benefited most from the Industrial Revolution were entrepreneurs who set it in motion. This new middle class came from several sources. Some members were merchants who invested their growing profits in factories. Others were inventors or skilled artisans who developed new technologies. Some rose from rags to riches, a pattern that the age greatly admired. Middle-class families lived in solid, well-furnished homes. They dressed and ate well. Middle-class men gained influence in Parliament, where they opposed any effort to improve conditions for workers. As a sign of their new standard of living, middle-class women were encouraged to become ladies. They took up ladylike activities such as drawing, embroidery, and playing the piano. A lady did not work outside of the home or do housework. Instead, the family hired maid servant. The family then set about educating its daughters to provide the same type of happy, well-furnished home for their future husbands. Sons gained an education that allowed them to become businessmen. The new middle class valued hard work and determination to get ahead. They had confidence in themselves and often little sympathy for the poor. If they thought of the faceless millions in the factories and mines, they generally supposed the poor to be responsible for their own misery. Some believed the poor were so lazy or ignorant that they could not work their way up out of poverty. Doesn't sound like that's the case, but I wasn't there. Maybe the middle class was right. I'm joking. Benefits and problems. New heading, final heading. Thank you for listening. If you've made it this far, please like. Please subscribe. because it's free. And it's all right, please. Benefits and problems. Since the 1800s, people have debated whether the Industrial Revolution was a blessing or a curse. The early industrial age brought terrible hardships, said English writer Thomas Carlyle. Something ought to be done. In time, something would be done. Reformers pressed for laws to improve workers' conditions. Workers' organizations called labor unions won the right to bargain with employers for better wages, hours, and working conditions. Eventually, working-class men gained the right to vote, which gave them political power. Despite the social problems created in the Industrial Revolution, low pay, unemployment, dismal living conditions, the industrial age did bring material benefits. As demand for mass-produced goods grew, new factories opened, creating more jobs. Wages rose so that workers had enough left after paying rent to buy food and buy newspaper or visit the music hall. As the cost of railroad travel fell, people could visit family in other towns. Horizons widened, opportunities increased. Industrialization has spread around the world today. Often it begins with great suffering. In the end, however, it produces more material benefits for more people. Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoy the weather. God bless, and goodbye.